Past the 8 o'clock hour on Friday, August the 25th. Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program, joined once again for our Friday conversation with Randy Holhut, Deputy Editor of the Commons, joining us from his compound in Dummerston. Good morning to you, Randy.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce. Hadn't broke out the compound in Dummerston line for a while. Seemed like a good time to do it.
Well, it's green and lush up here on the hill.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know. And of course, Brattleboro Savings and Loan sponsors our partnership with Brattleboro Community Television to document these conversations we have with members of the local media. They're here in the studio with us as well. And we want to thank Brattleboro Savings and Loan for being an ultra-local programming sponsor of BCTV live events, municipal meetings, and other events like these get-togethers with Randy. And you can check out the stories that we're going to discuss in the pages of the Commons, which are free on stands every Wednesday, as well as online at commonsnews.org. The lead story to me, really, Randy, and even though this meeting took place the Wednesday before last, when we're talking about August the 16th, the meeting that took place at the Winston Prouty campus about the emergency overflow shelter moving there, for emergency reasons, really. But I remember when I saw the press release from Groundworks Collaborative that they were going to go from the First Baptist Church to the Winston Prouty campus, to one of the dorms that is up there, since it was a full school for a long time as the Austin School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I thought, what a perfect location for this. And it seemed like an opportunity for them to really start providing different services for the people who need access to that winter overflow shelter. I really honestly thought this is who could possibly be against this? Well, I guess I spoke too soon when I thought that, didn't I?
Well, it is Brattleboro, and you can find people that'll be against anything. but the main thing is not so much whatever local opposition there is to it, or concern of children who go to Winston Prouty having interaction with any of the clients of the shelter. It's more of the logistics that at all this time people are used to going to the church, within walking distance of downtown. And now you're going to have to remember, okay, if I'm going to have a bed tonight, I have to be at the drop-in center at the appointed time so I can catch the bus to get up the hill to the Austin School. And if I miss that bus, I'm out of luck.
And I don't mean to disparage people who have concerns about, obviously you have different populations occupying a same space, but it's also those logistics that make me wonder how much interaction is even possible to occur on any given day with regards to those two different populations.
Yeah, the shelter is going to be open after the school is there. Is out
done
today,
right?
And the clients will be off the campus before the school opens every day.
Right. It just doesn't seem like. I mean, if there is an overlap, it is going to be so minute that I hope. And it sounds like, and I wasn't able to attend that meeting, and I know Mike Fair did this story for the Commons. I hope that people who attended that meeting and had questions, there certainly were a lot of people on hand to answer those questions, not just Josh Davis, the Executive Director of Groundworks, or Chloe Leary, running Winston Prouty Center, but Chief Mike Fitzgerald of the Brattleboro Police Department. Hopefully they were able to assuage some of those concerns.
They did the best they could, but the main thing is that this was the least worst option for Groundworks. Losing the First Baptist was a definite blow for the shelter, even though the church wasn't exactly the perfect location for a perfect building to provide the services, and Groundworks is still searching for that one building where they can combine the drop-in center and the overflow shelter and maybe some of Morningside services, too, somewhere in the downtown area. Find Groundworks a building that can meet those three things and not have people complaining about it like they did on Frost Street
right.
with the old auto body shop, and you will have achieved a miracle quite unseen in Brattleboro.
Well, and because everything else other than the location about this that I read in Mike's story here, using a campus dorm that actually allows you to have more beds, 33 instead of 20, multiple bathrooms with showers, laundry, kitchen, having spaces where you can have people who are representatives from Brattleboro Memorial Hospital, healthcare rehabilitation services, Brattleboro Retreat, there with the people, and full-time paid staffers versus trying to have volunteers cover those overnight shifts. Everything else other than location, this is a really great opportunity for Groundworks to do some real good for people who don't have anywhere else to go when the temperature gets this cold.
Yes, this dorm setup allows them to deliver services they could not possibly even begin to deliver at First Baptist Church. And really, the shift from volunteers to paid staff is one that's been building for a long time because it's a different population that they're dealing with. A lot of the people that we used to see downtown, they now have places to live in thanks to Groundworks. They've gotten apartments, and their lives are starting to come together. So you're dealing with a population that has more problems than in the past with drug addiction and mental health issues.
And yeah, I can't help but think that, especially when you look at the numbers of 154 people accessing the winter emergency shelter last year, that they could make an even bigger dent in that number and in trying to help, curb the homeless epidemic that is happening in this community and many communities across the country. If they're able to achieve that. And I think it would be a great model to see it happen up on the Winston Prouty campus. Now, we journey to the bottom of the fold story, also by Mike this week in the Commons, about the Brattleboro Retreat opening this welcoming place where they're putting young people on the campus of the Brattleboro Retreat while their parents, or guardians at least, get treatment, counseling services, and Suboxone for for their addiction troubles. And I can't help but think of the irony there of how the retreat is approaching this problem versus some of the concerns people in the community. And maybe it'll be a example for them to say, look, this is something that is not going to put kids in harm's way.
Well, it's kind of a sad fact that they have to do this because there are parents of children in this community that are undergoing addiction treatment. And while they're doing their treatment, what happens to their children? And this is a chance. I mean, you can make whatever judgment you want about the situation, but the welfare of the children is the most important thing. And have a safe place for the children to be while their parents are receiving treatment is a great idea.
Yeah, right there on the retreat campus. The welcoming place is what they're calling it. It opened on Thursday of last week, the day after this contentious meeting about the emergency overflow shelter up on the Winston Prouty campus, and sounds like something that really has a chance, if it works well at the retreat, to have some legs and possibly be replicated in other parts of the state.
Yeah, and because it's a problem now.
Yeah, a big problem, and certainly congrats to the retreat for getting the funding for this program from a number of different resources, including the Vermont Division of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Programs, recognizing what needs to be done in order to try and curb this opioid epidemic, and looking forward to seeing some good results from the Brattleboro Retreat about that. Looking forward to more conversations about stories in this week's edition of The Commons with Randy Holhut when we come back after the bottom of the hour news break. 61 degrees outside at 21 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program, continuing my conversation with Randy Holhut, Deputy Editor of The Commons, your reader-supported independent news and views source for Windham County, free on stands every Wednesday, online at commonsnews.org. Go there, become a member, support all this great nonprofit journalism about our community, including the Fall into Education section, the traditional Fall into Education section, although augmented with some pretty good stories this year, not just the bus schedules and the school openings, but some nice content in there as well this time, Randy.
Yes, Olga did a profile of Lyle Holliday, the new superintendent of Windham Southeast, for us.
Yeah, nice of Olga to step away from her radio duties to do that.
Yes. And, we don't have Ron Staley to kick around anymore.
Well, and I mean, he seems pretty well regarded as far as what he did and the length of time he spent as the superintendent of Windham Southeast Supervisory Union. And so I think she does have some big shoes to fill, but she seems to be somebody, especially going from substitute teacher to superintendent. This whole idea of a homegrown educator is something that I think is a really good story.
Yeah, I mean, there was some concern when the hiring process was done by some parents that the fix was in and that Lyle was the candidate all along, and the nationwide search they talked about was really just a sham. But it makes sense that you hire from within and you bring up people through the system, and the people who know the system best. Rather than plunking somebody from outside that may not know the intricacies of Wyndham Southeast.
Yeah, and not only having served within some of the schools themselves, but also serving as, I guess, a de facto assistant superintendent to Ron Staley for the past few years. You can't question her qualifications.
No, you can't, and I think she'll do a good job running the schools through a really turbulent time with Act 46 and all the turmoil over what the district's going to look like and what their neighboring school districts are going to look like.
Yeah.
And funding questions and everything else.
I was reflecting as I was reading Olga's story back on a few weeks ago, watching on BCTV one of the meetings in the town of Vernon around the revote on the withdrawal. It's part of this whole Act 46 process, and Lyle Holliday was there answering questions on behalf of the district about it. And I was like, wow, if they had gotten somebody from the outside to come into this, the learning curve would probably be intimidatingly steep.
Yes.
So good for Lyle for stepping into the role, and good luck to her as she moves forward. And a great story there, as I'm sure a lot of families are going to rely on that fallen education issue to check bus schedules and school openings and things like that. Take some time to read some of the content in there, including that profile of Lyle Holliday. I also want to ask you about a couple of Wendy stories, or very Wendy stories, I would say, that are in this week's edition of the Commons, including this Eclipse party up in Putney. Now, did you watch the Eclipse on Monday?
No, I didn't, because one, I was working. Two, from where I was, you couldn't see an awful lot. And three, I'll wait for the big one we get in 8 years.
Right. Well,
when we get the total eclipse.
Let me tell you, start looking for your glasses now for that 2024 eclipse. We started driving around on Saturday hoping we could get glasses, and we weren't the only ones. And everywhere we went, they were sold out. Positive Geek down on Flat Street, he said he had bought 250 pairs and sold out like that.
I know Emily Zervis of Putney thought, if I got 45 glasses, that should be enough for everybody. And she didn't expect a couple hundred people to show up.
It turned into, first of all, a veritable party, but it also a veritable science fair when you talk about all the different devices that people were pulling out. I really enjoyed reading Wendy's story about what went on up in Putney, music to go with it, and all the different things. I think ultimately, with all the news that's kind of cycling through each and every day on the national stage and the global stage, people really needed a story like the Eclipse that we could all kind of share and just feel good about, don't you?
Well, also, given the anti-science take of the person occupying the White House, nice to see science be put front and center as being a valid and important part of our daily lives. Yeah. Well said. Like that.
Well said. And certainly in a setting like the library and all the different folks in the community getting involved in sharing the glasses and sharing the telescope that another member of the community brought. It just sounded like a great party up in Putney to view the partial eclipse. I used the old-fashioned cereal box method myself. I made my own little pinhole camera there and watched it through that. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, it works pretty well, and the colander method also works too.
Right. Kind of the spreading of the different crescents that were out there. A lot of great photos on social media from some of those sorts of reflections of the eclipse as well. I also loved Wendy's story in the business and economy section about this new business, Shapeshifters, in the area. I mean, just an example, sometimes you come up with this niche product and then you need to wait for the market to come to you. It sounds like that's the case for the Coughlin Galbraiths.
Yes, and a case of, who knew that there was a demand for this?
Right.
Who knew that you could start a business like that from your house, which they did, and it has grown to the point where now they are getting a spot in the cotton mill to expand production, and they will be hiring people to do sewing there. And there's the plug they got on BuzzFeed a few weeks ago didn't hurt either.
No, that doesn't hurt at all. And we're talking about Eli and Krista Coughlin Galbraith, transplants from New York to the area. They have ties to the area here with family in the area, but also realizing that, hey, this is a business that you can do anywhere, and in this case, more affordably in a place like Brattleboro than they could in New York City, right?
Well, plus, of course, the Vermont thing, because everyone loves Vermont.
Everyone loves, but we're business unfriendly, Randy, don't you know? Just listen to our governor, how unfriendly we are to business. Apparently not to all of them.
The myth that will never die, it seems.
I know. It's just it's about the right type of business. And when you talk about what Shapeshifters is doing and the number of different groups, never mind, obviously, as I was saying, the niche product whose time has come with transgender and more acceptance of transgender, but theater and medical devices and all these different things. It's just one of those things like, how brilliant that they thought of this and thought about doing this safely. I mean, the people who do this, there's a real safety issue to some of this stuff. I thought Wendy did a great job illustrating all of those reasons why Shapeshifters is poised to really become a even better business and a bigger business in this area.
Yeah, and this is a place where you can do that, and you have incubator space like the cotton mill, where small businesses get to become big businesses eventually. Yeah.
So good for BDCC to support the work being done by Eli and Krista Coughlin Galbraith, and good on Wendy for sniffing out that story and bringing it to us in this week's edition of the Commons. Obviously, we're kind of in that lull in sports reporting right now with the high school season not yet underway and outside of the baseball season. So timely for you to write this story that you wrote, occupying pretty much the entire, if not the entire sports section. The entire. And a long story about, well, it's Tenney Field now. It was Stolte Field even far back, because I actually go back and Carl Tenney was my football coach back in the 80s before they renamed the field after him. But the whole history of the Grandstand was really remarkable stuff that you wrote about this week, and for good reason, obviously, with this hopefully a fundraiser to try and keep it going.
Yes, apparently the school committee has this plan to demolish the Grandstand, change the orientation of the field so the soccer field runs in a different direction, so they can have a regulation soccer and field hockey field. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because there's also talk of putting artificial turf on Manowich Field.
Right, and
that does make sense to me.
That does make sense, and I thought one of the reasons for doing that on Manowich Field was to have more soccer games over there and more field hockey games versus having it on the baseball field. And when you talk about the Grandstand at Tenney Field, I had not realized, and I should have, having been somebody who's traveled across most of Vermont to watch baseball games, that it is really one of the few grandstands that we have in this state.
Yeah, and certainly the only one in southern Vermont. And it has a very long history there from the old Northern League. It was there, and was a lot of major leaguers, a couple of Hall of Famers have played in front of people sitting in those seats. Also, it's just the idea that you already have a soccer field with a regulation-sized soccer field with Sawyer Field.
Yep.
And they spent a lot of money to buy the land and make that into a field, and also the dedicated softball diamond down there. An all-weather surface on Manowich Field would solve a lot of problems, because you've seen how chewed up that field gets from lacrosse and football.
Mm-hmm.
And having something that would be all weather and would be surer and safer footing for players would be a great thing. And the lights are there, and then you can have Tenney Field as a baseball field solely for baseball that could be the showpiece for Southern Vermont baseball. Maybe we could get one of those New England Collegiate Baseball League teams in to play at Tenney Field. we could see more tournaments there. I remember when they had the New England Babe Ruth tournament back in the 90s, and what a scene it was at then Stolte Field. We had 1,000 people watching baseball games there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really special for players to go and play on a field that has dugouts and a press box and a grandstand. And obviously, when the weather gets a little inclement, you can rush under there or you can watch. I mean, it really is kind of a special thing. And with baseball still having quite a good following in our area, I know that a lot of people look at the popularity of the sport waning. I don't necessarily see that here with Legion Ball, the strong Little League and the high school, and maybe even, as you mentioned, collegiate teams or tournaments here. It seems like it is something that is worth the investment of the community, but it's going to take a community investment, and it sounds like your piece might be getting the ball rolling on that.
Well, the ball actually got rolling by the Tenney people, and a chance meeting with Chris Groger, the baseball coach and label shopper, a few weeks ago, and finding Chris behind the counter, and we were starting to talk about what was happening in the field, because it was really disconcerting to go to a baseball game and see the field, the grandstand boarded up, and no one really having an answer for what was going to happen to the grandstand. I mean, I missed being able to sit up there.
Yeah, great.
A lot of people miss being able to sit up there.
Absolutely, a terrific place to watch a game, and you get all your best stories at Label Shopper, don't you?
I don't know about stories, but
clothing.
But sometimes you got to leave the office to get some stories.
That's right.
And it was really Team Tenney, as it's starting to coalesce, has been really helpful in providing information, and you're going to be hearing a lot more from these people, because this is an important part of the town's history that deserves to be saved, but it's going to take an effort to do it.
Yeah.
Just like it took an effort to save Harris Hill.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a perfectly appropriate comparison, and the research you did into the history for the Works Progress Administration constructing this, and then the fire, and then rebuilding it, really is something worth preserving for this community. Appreciate your story about it. Appreciate your time this week, Randy. We'll talk to you again next Friday.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Once again, Commons free on stands every Wednesday and online at commonsnews.org.